Hi guys, welcome to Mr. U's Garage. Since I've had some requests to do some things that are a little outside of the box, I thought, well, we'll show you some different things that you can do to take care of your cars since some of you will be driving soon. Just kind of a brief overview of some of the tools that you'll need to do some simple things like change your oil, change some spark plugs, take care of a tire when it goes flat. So here are some of the basic tools that you need to have when you change oil. This is a 3/8 inch drive ratchet. A decent set of 3/8 inch drive sockets in metric, which are these guys right here, and in standard, which are these guys here. The difference is that standard sockets are measured in inches, which you'll see the 1/2 here. So that's a 1/2 inch socket, that's a 7/16, etc. Whereas metric sockets just have numbers on them to let you know how many millimeters they are, like 10, 11, 12, 13, etc. I also like to have a flexible head extendable ratchet when I work on cars because it gets into various places that are hard to reach. But you don't have to have one of these. These are 3/8 inch drive oil filter wrenches. These are handy because they go on the ends of the oil filters, and your ratchet fits in them just like this, and it allows you to grip the oil filter and remove it. It makes things really easy. The reason that there's different sizes, of course, is because there's different sizes of oil filters. Generally, the bigger ones for bigger engines. The medium ones tend to be in these are in most passenger cars and light SUVs. This little guy here, you'll find him on a lot of smaller cars like a Kia Rio or a Honda Civic. This is what they call an O-ring pick. Sometimes the O-rings from the filters tend to get stuck and you have to get them off. Or if you have a cartridge type filter, which I probably won't show a video changing one of those, you'll need one of these to get the O-ring off of that. And the universal wrench, a screwdriver, because sometimes you need to take a screwdriver and just jam it into the oil filter and turn it because it's stuck on there. And of course, you'll need some oil. There's a lot of different kinds of oil. You'll need to consult the owner's manual of the car to tell you what kind of oil to put in and how much to put in. Here's a few of the other things that you need to change oil. One, you need a container to catch the oil in. A couple of jack stands. And a jack. I have two different kinds here. The smaller one is a more common jack that your parents probably have in their garage. It's known as a trolley jack. These are very inexpensive and easy to get at most parts stores or Walmart. This larger jack I have is a service jack. These are usually more expensive and most people don't have these, but they are very nice to have if you do a lot of work. Jack stands are what you need in order to safely hold up your car, because as nice as jacks are, they are not foolproof. They can fall and you could be underneath the car and get crushed. It's very important that you use a pair of jack stands when changing oil. They work very simply. You pull it up to the desired height. You lift the car with the jack. You put this underneath the car. When you're done, you lift the jack back up. You lift the car off of the jack stand, you flip this little lever, and it falls down, and you pull it out from underneath the car. These are very, very important safety devices, and do not attempt to change your oil on your own without them. Another important thing to have is a funnel. This makes putting your oil in a lot easier, and you don't spill it everywhere. If you don't happen to have one of these, it's okay. You can get by, because you can take and turn an old oil bottle into a funnel very quickly. And actually, a lot of times, this ends up working better than this big fills all funnel. Another tool to have for changing oil and doing work on your car is something called a trouble light. It's just a light with a cage around it to keep it protected and a simple switch. Turn it on, turn it off. But when you're underneath the car, it adds a lot of light so you can see what you're doing. One more thing that's handy but you don't have to have is a creeper. These are nice because you can lay on them and slide around. But I've changed a lot of oil and I often just lay on the ground and do it. Here are also some substitutes if you don't happen to have a 3/8" drive ratchet. You can actually get most of this job done with a plain combination wrench. This is the open end, this is the box end. This is a metric version. It says 15 millimeter. Kind of like these because they have some extra little grippers, make it a little harder for them to slip off of the nuts when I'm trying to get them off. I also have a couple of ratcheting style combination wrenches here. These are actually really handy, but they're rather expensive and I don't expect many people to have them. But they actually allow the wrench to ratchet so you don't have to take it off each time you go to use it. But these aren't necessary to have, but they are really handy. But combination wrenches like this will get the job done if you don't happen to have a solid ratchet set. So where do you go to get your oil and oil filter? Well, you go to a reputable auto parts store such as CarQuest. You can also go to Walmart. But here's the reason it's easier to go to an auto parts store. Because you walk in and you tell the fine folks behind the counter what kind of car you have, what year it is, and what the specific model is. So, for instance, I have a 2017 Jeep Compass Latitude. They will be able to take that information and look up specifically the oil and filter you need. You may need to know one more detail, such as the size of your engine. My engine is a 2.4 liter dual overhead cam. So the next part in all this, after you've acquired your oil and filter, is to either bring your car into a garage or park it on a nice level surface and find where your hood latch is and open it like this. Then you have to come around to the front of the car and find where the release is for the hood. Otherwise, there's an emergency catch that keeps the hood from flying up when you're driving down the road. And it's usually underneath the emblem. And you just stick your fingers in the crack till you feel it, and then you just push it to the left. Once you've done that, you need to locate your hood prop and put it up. This will hold your hood up so it doesn't fall on you. It goes in here, and it usually lays down in a spot kind of like this. Some cars it's on the right hand side, some it's on the left hand side. Just is going to depend. Some cars have fancy little struts that hold it up by themselves. And if all else fails, find a broom handle or something like that to hold it up for you. The reason that you lift the hood before you put the car up on its jack stands is because that When your car is up on jack stands, you may cause damage to the doors by opening them after the car has been lifted up. So the easiest way to avoid this is just to make sure that we open this first. Also, before I get started, I like to take a second just to inspect a few things and make sure they're all right. This is my overflow bottle for my coolant. I like to make sure that the level is where it's supposed to be. This is my windshield wiper fluid. I like to make sure that I have some in there. If I don't, I need to make sure that I fill it before I'm done. This is my power steering fluid. I make sure to check to see if this is at the right amount. You will also see that my engine has a cover on it, but it does tell me a couple of things. One, it tells me my engine size. Two, it tells me what kind of oil I need. So if I couldn't find it in the manual, it tells me right here. The cover easily lifts off, and I can just inspect a few other things. I want to talk a little bit about jack placement before I lift this vehicle up. The part that I'm pointing to right in here is actually what's called a jacking point or a stand point. This is where I want to put my jack stand. This ridge that runs along here is a place that I can safely lift the car without causing damage. So when I put my jack underneath, I want to make sure that the plate is along this ridge so I can lift the car safely. Some older cars have an actual axle that you can use to lift from, but a lot of newer cars don't, so you have to know where these are. This is my professional garage jack. This jack operates by pumping the handle, which raises the car. If I wish to lower the car at any point, or when I'm all done, I simply turn the handle back to the left and it will lower the car back down, which is hard to see in this video. So I'm going to raise this vehicle up on the jacking point all the way to where I can get this jack stand underneath it. So once you have the car lifted as high as you need, then all you have to do is take your jack stand and extend it as high as you need it to go, and then you can lower it just a little bit so the car settles on top of the jack stand. You will notice now that the car is sitting on top of the jack stand after I've lowered it, and the point that I was talking about earlier is sitting right inside the jack stand. This is the safest place for it to be. The car will not come down on you now. I've now moved around to the other side of the vehicle, and this time I'm going to use the trolley jack to lift it up. It operates in much the same way as the larger professional jack. You use the handle to pump it and it lifts the car. However, lowering the car is slightly different. You have to remove the handle, slide it out, and then you have to put the handle on this end right here and turn it to the left. That will lower the car. Turn it back to the right and it will tighten it up so the car won't lower anymore, and you can insert it back in and lift the car. So now that I have lifted the car up, put the jack stand in its proper location just like the other side, I'm now going to lower the car down onto the jack stand. And that was it. Because I had everything lined up properly, there was no clunks or bumps, and now the car is completely supported and I can safely work underneath it without it falling on my head. The next step is to slide your oil catch container with the drain opening open underneath your car to approximately where you think the engine might be, or between the two front wheels, because frankly I can never remember exactly where it should go until I slide under there. I also like to have all my tools and stuff underneath the car before I get underneath it, because it's a pain in the butt for an old guy like me to get in and out. I also make sure that I have my trouble light underneath as well so I can see. So now that we're under here, there isn't much to see because my wife's car has a skid plate. That little opening that you see up here is where the drain plug is for the engine. This is the drain bolt for this Jeep. It's in the oil pan, and it's what holds all the oil in the engine. When I take this out, all the oil will come out. So make sure that you have your drain pan underneath it. So with your socket set or your set of open-end wrenches, what you're going to do now is put on a bunch of different ones until you find the right size. On a 2017 Jeep, it happens to be a 1/2 inch. Now, the nice thing about a socket and a ratchet is that they have this little lever. When I push the lever like this, it is now in the take the bolt off position. So I can put this on the bolt, like so. It requires usually 2 hands to loosen it. But once you have it loose, you can hear how the ratchet makes noise going only in one direction. And by turning it to the left loosens, and you never have to take it off. Once you get it so loose, then you can just use your fingers and twist it, and all the oil will come pouring out. And what you want to do is when you get it right about to the end, get your fingers on it tight so you can pull it away so you don't get a bunch of oil on your hands. And now this will all empty out into my pan. So this is what the actual drain plug looks like once it's out of the car. You can see that it has this little flange on here. This is what helps keep the oil inside, but otherwise there is nothing much to it. I want to show you really quickly how these oil filter wrenches fit. Okay, this is the oil filter for my wife's 2017 Jeep. Nothing special about it. It has a part number right here, 84060. This one is obviously too big. This little guy is obviously too small. So this one right here, you want to try to match these little grooves up so it fits down inside this. And it's actually a lot easier when it's on the car. But once it's on there, it grips and it's able to twist it off of the car. You don't need this to install it because when you put this on, you actually just turn it with your hand until it's tight. But by sizing it before you get underneath the car will ensure that you don't waste time trying to figure out which one it is. And also, the best thing you can do is while you're still at the car parts store is ask the guy behind the counter to go out and help you find the right size, because this little gadget will save you a ton of time later on. So while the oil drains out, this is where the filter is located on the 2017 Jeep Compass. So I'm going to stick my filter wrench up on the end of this, right in here. And then, once I have it secured on there, I will put my ratchet on it. This is where the extension comes in handy because there's quite a bit of distance up to here. It's hard to show, but this is where an extension is helpful. So you just take the extension, you line the hole up, and you push it in just like that. So I actually went to a longer extension so we could see what we're doing in here. But you just, once you get this on the filter, then you can just take your ratchet and spin it until you get it loose. And then once you have it loose enough, you can take your ratchet off. You'll start to get some oil around it, so make sure you pull your pan underneath it, take your extension off, reach up in here. You're gonna get some oil on your hands this time. No matter what you do, spin it the rest of the way off. And what you hope is that you can bring it down and land it right in that pan next to you. So now you can see up in here the threads and what the filter attaches to itself. And what you hope is that the seal is clean, which it is. There isn't an extra black ring there. In the filter itself is this black O-ring. And sometimes that black O-ring will stick up there. And if it does, that's what you need that pick for. Because you can pick that O-ring right off of that surface. You want to be careful when you do that so you don't gouge that surface, so be gentle. But it should just take one little pop to cut it to come off. And now you just let the oil drain out of here. When you don't have any drips out of either hole anymore, then we can go back to putting on the new filter and the new drain plug and filling it back up with oil. Okay, the next step in our process here is to start putting everything back on. I like to start with putting the oil filter back on first. And what you're going to do is open a new bottle of oil, get a little bit on your finger, and you're going to lube this O-ring right here with the oil. This will help later on when you've got to get it off. Plus, it ensures that the O-ring actually makes a good seal and it doesn't leak. And I always take a little bit of oil too and do the threads inside here, just because it's brand new and you should try to lubricate threads whenever you can. Now we're back under the vehicle and you can see everything's drained out and stopped dripping. So we're going to take our filter here and we're just going to put it right up so that hole lines up with those threads. And we're just going to spin it right back on. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, folks. And you just spin it until you can't tighten it with your hand anymore. That's all you need to do, no tighter. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get this sucker off later. Okay, so here's the opening for the drain plug. This is where you're going to put your drain plug back into and tighten it by hand. Okay, so we are now ready to reinstall the drain plug. I didn't show me putting it in with my fingers because this is all you could see. So I used my fingers to turn it to as tight as it would go by hand. And I'm sorry that this picture shakes, but it's really difficult to do this in this tight space. And then I have taken my ratchet, flipped it to the righty-tighty position or on position, and I'm going to put it on the nut, and I'm going to go until it's tight. And believe it or not, with my fingers, I got it almost all the way. Go just a little further, as tight as I can with my arm, and you're done. Okay, we're about to add the oil, but I thought I'd give a quick note on where you find how much oil your car takes. You can usually find it in a manual that comes with your car. If you can't do that, you can usually look it up online, or the people at the parts store usually know. Right here you'll see that it's underneath the heading fluid capacities. So if you look in the index and look up fluid capacities, you will find it. And it says that we need 5W20 oil and it takes 4.5 quarts. But it actually takes 5 because a half of quart of oil is going to get soaked up by the filter. So we need to have 5 quarts of oil. Okay, so we're ready to add our oil. So I have laid out my 5 quarts of oil right here. And right here is the filler. So we're going to take this cap off, and that's going to open up the block. We're going to make sure that our funnel is clean and that I've removed my cover from the funnel. And then we're just going to stick that right in there. We're going to open up a bottle of oil. And we're going to slowly pour it in. This stuff can go all over the place, and you really don't want it all over the place because it can be expensive, especially when you're using synthetic oil like this. Plus, you don't really want to waste it and get it all over. So while that's pouring in and dripping in, the next thing we're going to do is start putting this car on the ground. Okay, so when you take the car back to the ground, what you need to do first is use the jack to lift the car back up so it's no longer on the jack stand itself. And then the easiest thing to do with this style is to pull this lever. The jack falls, pull it out, and then turn it very slowly to the right and allow the car to come down gently. Make sure before you start doing this that you've pulled all your tools and the oil pan out from underneath the car. Now I'm going to take this bottle out and I'm going to add another bottle. This is bottle number 2. And then if you go too fast, you'll overfill your funnel, and then you'll be in a world of hurt. I just about did that there. That was a little too fast. I should have gone a little slower. Now I'm going to go and pull the other side down. So again, this side with the trolley jack, just make sure that you've pumped the jack handle enough times and gotten the car back up off of the jack stand itself. And then I'm going to reach under and let the jack stand come out. Never ever be under the car while you're doing this because you could end up having it come down on you. Now you're just going to take the end of your jack handle and you're going to put it on this little guy right here. And now you're going to twist it to the left a little bit. And boom, down he goes. Okay, so the second bottle's in and we've got the car flat on the ground now. So now we're going to add the third bottle right here. This time maybe it'll be a little easier for me to pour it slow. So once you've put all 5 bottles in, then I'll show you what to do. While you are waiting for the oil to drip into the engine, I like to just take and do some general cleaning with a paper towel or a rag and just try to get some of the dust wiped up if I can, because it makes it easier later on to find leaks if you have any. So just try to do a few little general things. Plus it helps pass the time while you're waiting by wiping things down. Okay, so once you've finished filling it with your 5 quarts or 6 or however many your car takes, take your funnel out and then you're just going to put the cap back on the oil fill and you're going to turn it until it's tight. And then you're almost done. One thing I like to do is I like to pull the dipstick, which is right here, and check to make sure that there's oil in it. Now, as you can see, there's a lot, right? But that's not true just because I've been filling it. So I'm going to wipe this off and we're going to stick it in there again. Now that I've wiped it off and stuck it back in, we're going to pull it a second time. And now that you can see where the gold is, that's oil. There is a hash mark that's really hard to see that says full, and your oil should be over that. Because I haven't run the engine yet, after you've run the engine and given the filter a chance to soak up some of the oil, it should be in those safe hash marks or a little over them, depending on your car. These aren't exact, but they're pretty close. That pretty much wraps it up. If you have an engine cover, you should put the engine cover back on. But if you've done all these things, you have successfully changed your oil, and you can go about driving around again. One quick note, you should find an environmentally safe way to dispose of your oil. Most auto parts stores will take it back. So will some car dealerships, or check with the county. That's a lot of work. I would just take it back to the place you got it from. They'll usually accept it. You'll probably have to put it back in the bottles that you used to fill the car with, but that's okay. So thank you for enjoying this little lesson on how to change your oil. Good luck and happy driving.